You're watching a documentary business webinar, and I'm really excited to have with me today Roy Ackerman, veteran producer, consultant. Roy's had a wonderful career, but Roy, tell us what you're focused on now as we head into our webinar on the subject of 10 secrets of successful pitching.
Uh, well, I think the market's changing radically, and I'm setting up a new kind of consultancy, which we're calling Traction. And the point of it is, particularly for producers outside the US, is to help you make your development and your pitching more efficient, because people are spending a lot of money on pitches now. And I think that Americans are always happy with their agents, and agents do a great job. But I think we're trying to offer a new advice service for people who want to get their shows sold. And I don't just mean in the US, I mean globally, in the new world of the creator economy and the changing face. You've
So
had
that's
a good,
Traction.
yeah, it's called Traction, which kind of sums up what it is. And anyway, if people want to contact us, I'll leave a contact at the end. But you've had a pretty good couple of weeks. You've had a big award for one of your projects. Tell me about it.
Oh, thanks a lot, Roy. Yeah, I shared a Panda Award, which is a wild screen award. It's the kind of Oscars of wildlife filmmaking. And my co-production on Pangolin, Journey to Freedom, with our South African and Austrian partners, won an award. And I just feel incredibly honored. Team effort and a very idiosyncratic story about how it all came about. There's no just one way to success. And what you can read about that will include links in the end of the webinar. It's called Pangolin
Brilliant.
Journey to Freedom. But let's get on to you, Roy. We want the business today is pitching secrets. And you've listed 10. Let's hope we can get through them in 30 minutes or less. And so let's start. What's number one?
Yeah, I think that you need, well, sounds obvious, but you need a pitch strategy. Who are you trying to get this show to? Do you want it on Netflix? Do you want it on BBC and a range of international broadcasters? Do you think it's better as a launch, a digital launch, a private digital launch, YouTube launch? You've just got to have an idea of where your audience is and where you think the money is. And I think it's perfectly possible that you've got one idea and somebody's going to come back to you and say, well, you think it's Netflix. Actually, really, it's better off as a BBC show and international sales. But you definitely need to have a strategy. And the point of an agent or somebody like yourself, a documentary business, or me at Traction, is to maybe guide you onto what that platform that you maybe had your heart set on
So you've got
really
to look at
wants.
what the platform wants. You've got to filter out. It's pointless pitching, discovery with a serious feature documentary on a life-changing environmental subject because that's not what they do. Is that what you mean by strategy? Understand
I think
who the
so.
buyers are and what they want?
Yeah, I mean, look, I always used to get sent those mandates from broadcasters, and I'm going to be really honest, I generally didn't use those to define my pitches, because what a network tells the world on a platform agent isn't necessarily what they're really hankering for. It's often what, the key creative buyer says to their most trusted producer. So the closer you can actually get to the buyers through people who they really, really want to work with, it might be different than what's publicly said on platforms. But in the absence of very, very proprietary one-to-one information, yeah, go on what they say. I mean, and things change very fast, and they're continually changing. 5 years ago, Netflix were buying reputational documentaries. They were buying documentaries that were going to get them awards. And so
Yeah.
were Discovery. I mean, Discovery had, look at the people they hire and the people they let go. So that kind of information changes. But if we're talking about how to sell a show, we're not just talking about what you know right now today. You must get advice. And as I say, if you've got an agent, you talk to your agent. If you've got a consultant like Peter Hamilton, you talk to them. But if I'm doing my sort of 10 top tips, a pitch strategy is very much like, who are you aiming this film or this series at? Yeah, I was brought a film yesterday by friends of mine, they're looking for private funding. It's a very radical left-wing film. They're not even thinking about getting a streamer. And at least
Yeah.
that informs the materials they've made. They're not trying to make it something that a buyer wants. They don't want to compromise. And I respect that. It's just, if you're going to start with the first thing is, what's your strategy?
Good on you. Number two, a funding strategy.
God, I feel like it's a quiz show, Peter.
Yeah, we've got to move it along.
Okay. Well, a funding strategy, and again, that's a sort of much, you know, that term can mean many things, but it obviously starts with a budget. Now, let's be honest, anybody who's made a film knows that there are plural budgets. There's the budget you want and the budget you can make it for. But let's say your budget's $1 million. And let's say you think you've got interest at Warner Brothers Discovery, and you think they're going to pay you $500K for North American rights. And we know streamers tend to like global rights, but that's streamers are now much more open to multi-party deals. But let's say it's $1 million film and you think you're going to get $500K for North American rights. Where are you going to get the rest of the money? So that's a funding strategy. And one of them might be $300K private investment, $400K from a distributor, and $300K for North American rights from Discovery. What that should do is it should add up to your total budget. Now, you might say, I can make this film for $500,000. It will be slightly more modest, but I can make it for $500,000. Or you might say, I'm going to fund it to rough cut, and then I'm going to take the rough cut out and try and get completion funds. So your funding strategy has to be, it's a new thought. It has to be kind of horizontal and vertical. Vertically, how much adds up to my budget, but it might also be phased. You might say, okay, I can raise money from an investor or from a foundation or a grant. I can raise that money to shoot a rough cut. And I think it would be fair to say, because I was chatting to a distributor after MIPCOM, the market in Cannes, which is now only once a year. People used to go out there with a sizzle and get pre-sales. Pre-sale would be an advance of 200K, an advance of 100K against your $1 million budget. People are now saying, yeah, I like the idea of this film, but can I see a rough cut? Because then I'll be able to give you a clearer idea. And because it's a buyer's market, and I think you'd find that from a lot of distributors, they're saying, come back to me with your rough cut. Now, in which case you have to fund your rough cut. And therefore your funding strategy is likely to be different. You might say, not in your rough cut, you might not have cleared the music, cleared the archive, done your final post. You might have put a deferred fee against your, to get paid when you finally sell the film. You might say, take half your producer fee, half your director fee, and get the rest when you sell the rest of the film. But a funding strategy, I quite like that idea of horizontal and vertical. It's got to add up to the amount of money you need. And if it's going to come in tranches, you've got to have an idea of what comes first, what comes second.
But also you've got to build into that what the market trend is, what the buyers will spend.
Yeah.
It's pointless going into a funding strategy with a 5-year-old budget when everybody that I talk to is aware that budgets are being shaved, often quite radically right now. So you've got to know what the contemporary pricing expectation is for, let's say, a special or a limited series.
I think so. Again, I'm going to, you'll know that you can buy an airline ticket from London to New York for different prices, and it depends when you're buying. It also kind of depends on other things. I was having a conversation with a well-known broadcaster. I won't say who it was, and I was telling them about a film I'm working on. And they said, okay, if we came in, what would we get for our, and then he quoted a number, a price. And I was shocked how much it was. I was thinking, oh my God, that's fantastic. Now, he could have misspoken. He could have been, but I went back to somebody else and I said, really? Is he really going to spend that kind of money for British rights? It was a British person. And they said, well, if they really want something, yes, they will. So even though, yes, budgets are going down, particularly as people are seeing the creator economy and stuff being done on YouTube very cheaply, but doing well, budgets are definitely coming down, including at Netflix, including at HBO and all those places. But, if they really want something, you can actually sometimes get quite a good price.
Good to know. Number three, a brilliant deck.
Yes, I mean, I'll be honest, until not that long ago, I was pitching stuff with a Word document with a couple of pictures, old fashioned, print. And
And plus your reputation, Roy.
plus, or not say my reputation, the reputation of the production team, the director, and possibly the access we had. And if I could reorder these into different, I'm not saying the first one's the most important, the third most important, but people are now selling things with nicely produced decks, like used to only be done by advertising agencies and marketing agencies. And what do I think about that? Well, keep them short. If you're going to, if you know that the people you're selling to really do like a good presentation and they're showing them to the head of marketing at the network, yeah, it should look good. Now, I don't know if either of us are great designers. I can use PowerPoint, I can use Canva, but we all know that some decks look absolutely fantastic. And I think if my advice to you, if it's going to hold you up and you haven't got the money for it, then keep it really simple and certainly keep it short. But yes, if you can make something look arresting, and it's going to help. But the most important thing is that the things that they need to know are up front. In other words, the synopsis, the elevator pitch, what the access is, who the director is. So you don't want to have that buried on page 19. And if you are going to do a long deck, because it's a lot of research, make sure the things they need to know to get their bosses introduced are right up front.
I always say short decks, 10 or 11 pages is kind of the maximum, but also realize that the deck's going to change. You're not going to create a brilliant deck and lock it down. It really depends who the buyer is, because you're going to create images that reflect moods that you might be pitching to different buyers. So
absolutely. And I mean, for example, and again, if I'm talking about individual films, it's only because the specific usually gives you the insight. I've got an investigative film where we've got 50% funded, and we've got different decks for different parts of the world because we can shape the front end of the film to that territory. But warning, if you do 5 decks, be prepared to make 5 different films. And if you can't afford that is an issue. That is an issue. But yes,
gets down
a
to the
good
deal.
deck, keep it short. But there's a very good rule that the tabloid journalists have used to say is read from the top. So the beginning of the deck should tell you all you'll need. Each part of the deck should be telling you more, and it should end with thank you. Don't put the important stuff on page 10. And
there you go.
It's not always only 10 pages. If there's a lot of detail, maybe that's a separate document. The pitch deck's 8-9 pages. If they need to read, a lot of background material, put that in a backup doc.
Well, I always say the pitch deck is telling a story. It's telling the story about how you're going to make the film. It's not just providing with several chunks of information. So remember, it's the story that's at play there. So
and last word on decks.
Yeah,
sorry, before we go to number 4, just make it really well written.
Yeah.
And do not outsource your writing to AI. I firmly do not recommend that. I mean, I always think it should be, if it's it should read as well as a good article in the New York Times or a good article in what your favorite website is. Do not stint on it being really compelling writing.
Gotcha. Number 4, a sizzle.
Okay. Well, I think there's more than one type of sizzle. There's the rip reel. The rip reel is effectively taken from publicly available material. And by which I mean, YouTube videos, news reports. Generally speaking, those should be 2 minutes, definitely no more than 3. If you've got some new interviews, new material, that's always an advantage. And it should be obvious that you shot it. If you've got a key talent or for example, a whistleblower telling you something, if you can afford to, shoot it with a proper, really good DOP, proper cameraman. If you can't afford to, but you can do a Zoom interview, some buyers will understand that. They know you're going to go back and do it properly. So there's the rip reel. Then there's a kind of really, I mean, I've got a format. I showed the rip reel to my wife, who's a very talented director. She thought, God, did you shoot this stuff? We'd picked material from other films that really made it look like we'd shot something new. It's very, very good. Then you've got the what I call the proof of concept, where you've shot a scene, like a verite scene or something, or you've got amazing archive that nobody else has got. That can be longer. That can be 6, 7 minutes. And as long as you're telling the buyer, look, we've already started shooting. We've got this scene. Have a look at this. And sometimes a scene, a 2, 3 minute scene that's your like gobsmackingly good is better than a snip, 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 fast cut reel, because a lot of people know that sizzle reels are sort of smoke and mirrors. They can sometimes mask the fact you haven't got a hell of a lot of material.
Yeah.
So that's the 3 levels. And then, of course, there's, 20-minute, half, like a section of a film, but that's a slightly different thing.
And the point is, you don't need to commit to a section of the film. We used to call that a presentation tape, a section of this film or the series between the ad breaks, that a sizzler is going to be most effective if it's in that, 3 minute, 2 to 3 minute rip and reel length, up to maximum 5 or 6 minutes if you've got really compelling original footage and sequences. So you agree?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, as I said, sometimes you've been working on a film with development money, or it's something that a filmmaker brings to you and they've shot something. If there is a 3-minute scene which watched sort of uncut is really fantastic, sometimes just saying, look, have a look at this scene, and some buyers are going to say, wow, not only is this really compelling content, but it shows that the filmmaker has captured that and it's unique. And sometimes you don't want to cut it short, but again, you have to know who your buyer is. Some buyers are really good at reading that kind of stuff. Some buyers just want a classic, like a commercially cut rip reel sizzle.
So good to find that out before you send them, whatever you're going to send them. Let's look at number 5, motivation.
I think I think that leads on. It's like, frankly, who are you? Who are you? And why you? And we know that at times when buyers are being very risk averse, which is where we are at the moment, they tend to want to go for a very, very credentialed, big time filmmaker, which is why you'll often look at the Oscar nominees and they're making 5 different films. And, if you're not an Oscar nominee or an Oscar winner or an Emmy winner, a BAFTA winner, it's tougher. And I've often been in a situation where I can either get like an Oscar nominee who I'm going to get very little of their bandwidth, or a fully committed filmmaker who doesn't have as many awards. You just need to convince the buyer that you're the right person for the job. And when I say motivation, it's why you? Why are you going to really bring something special? And it's either because of your skills, and and maybe you have an executive producer who tells them why you're good rather than you having to sell yourself. But it's also about your passion. And passion's a much overused word, a bit like authenticity. But I think that buyers still know that if you're going to be working on it with incredible passion, or you're going to get out of the witnesses fantastic material. I mean, I don't know who made your pangolin film, but nature films usually mean long hours out in the field. And if that director has been doing that for 2 years, then they're the right person to make the film. And then my next tip is going to be what you put with that person.
I don't think you can fake passion. I totally agree with you. It's interesting. You mentioned authenticity. I reckon you can fake authenticity, but if someone really believes in a project, it just really stands out. So I think they're really important qualities.
Yeah.
Package. What added talent do you need for the buyers to want to work with you?
Well, let's evolved from the last thing we're talking about. So you're a young filmmaker, or you're a, I mean, I'm working with a filmmaker who until recently has been a photographer, like a very good portrait photographer. She shot a film. I'm helping her shape it into an easier to sell film. She shot a film about a screenwriter. I said, let's lead with the movie that he made that we all love. So at least it's a more appealing front end. That's part of the package. So we're not making the film about his life, making a film about his most famous movie. And look, this photographer hasn't made 30 films. So we're trying to put around her an experienced producer and an experienced EP. I'm the experienced EP. The producer's done a similar kind of film, so I found him. He'd also made a film about a very popular movie from that period. So you're saying to the buyers, well, we've got so-and-so. He knows how to make this kind of film. Look at the last one he did. We've got so-and-so. Look at the last film that person did. Now, that's what they call packaging. And we all kind of have done a bit of that. I had a series idea that I first wrote in, wait for it, 1988. I sold it in 2022, 34 years later, because a very famous celebrity actor and producer came on board as an executive producer. Now, it's very important this. Was he going to narrate the film? Not necessarily. Was he going to be in the film? Probably not, because there were reasons. I won't go into the specifics of it. But this person was a very, very good name to have on the ticket, because when we launched the project, which we did last year, he was able to do publicity and talk about it. And that person was a very, very big name. So packaging can involve an EP, a sort of a partner, as it were. Now, broadcasters are expecting more bang for their buck. They're paying for that person. They want them to be committed to doing publicity. As it happened, that project, we did a co-production with their production company, with that leading person's production company. So packaging starts with, if you do not want to give up the film now, if you're a producer and you haven't hired your director, the bigger name director is going to make it easier to sell, obviously. And, I've got a film where we're choosing between a very good director who I can get 100% of his time, or, a movie maker who's like a big time narrative, fiction movie maker who I'm going to get less of their time. That's a part of the packaging. And
so I got a packaging story for my Panda award-winning film, the Pangolin film. A South African production company, Silver Bullet, had unique access to a foundation in Zimbabwe, Tiki Highwood, who saved orphaned and threatened pangolins. So they pitched me. I realized that a path to getting this production accomplished was to work with Ruth Berry, who had an intimate relationship, professional relationship with Terramata Studios in Austria, who had a close relationship with nature. So that was the way the package came together, with that stream of key figures. I'm going to getting a little cough here, so I'm going to leave it to you for a second, Roy.
Okay. So this packaging issue it's tricky, because, to get your project off the ground, are you going to lose total control of your project? And I think that's sad if you have to. And I think when you're packaging, you want to, I'm a great believer, going back to the issue of motivation and passion. If you're basically getting somebody on board who hasn't got the knowledge or the real investment that you have in that show. So your ideal is to get somebody on board who wants to empower you, who wants to help you. But the packaging is also, could be another production company who come on board, who effectively are offering quality control. And it's all, look, bottom line is, it's about risk management for a network. If you give a show to somebody who hasn't got the experience, you're worried, and you want someone in the package who's going to make sure that this show it's going to be the best version of that show. And I think if you're a buyer, you're having people in the package who are going to make sure that this film or this series or this format's going to be really good in its delivery, then that's very good.
Next one, very important, packaging, exclusive access, unique access. We probably don't need to cover that so deeply, but definitely don't go and sell somebody that you've got unique access to Elvis coming back from the dead and finding out that 5 people also have the rights to that event.
Yeah. Yeah, as you say, it's fairly obvious, but I think I've done this with you on previous chats. Exclusive access is pretty much key to anything you're doing. And it might be a different, like, they've just done another OJ series. What was the exclusive? I think, as I remember it, they got the cops, because in the previous version, the Ezra Edelman, award winner, it was very much from the point it was about the cops, but I don't think they had the cops. So I'm thinking, why are they doing another OJ series? Well, they had the cops. Yes, not all of us can get people tied up in deals, but generally you want something on paper that confirms they are going to be exclusive to you. And whatever it is, very few things are getting commissioned without some very, very strong exclusive.
Yep, and that could include archive, it could
Yeah.
include personalities, etc. Plenty of coverage of that. Number 8, we're moving ahead. We got 8, 9, and 10 to go. Relationship, who do you need to know? Haven't we covered that already? We need to know buyers. We need to know.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I don't, well, look, it's very quick. If you cold call a buyer, it's much harder. If you, Peter Hamilton, have a good relationship with a particular buyer, it's going to go a lot better. So yeah, knowing somebody makes it more likely that you're going to get a good hearing. Simple as that.
Yep. Number 9, timing. Very interesting. When to go. Boy, so many factors involved in timing.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously we've given you a long checklist of things to get together, and you've got to get those things together. But if you think something's happening out in the world, the one thing that I'm sure you've talked about in documentary business is people like shows that are ripped from the headlines. So, if something happens, I mean, I remember a big terrorist incident in London. I pitched it the next morning. I was the third person to pitch. I think I pitched it at 8 the next morning. So there is a timing issue, and it's a timing of when to pitch, with what to pitch, and when it's going to come out. I think one of the things we all know about television is often it's late to the party. Very good friend of mine made a film about Mangione, the guy who shot the United Healthcare guy. They turned around a film in 5 weeks.
Wow.
So timing is about when to pitch, with whether to wait. We've got a format show. Some news that came out recently has made it more timely. Timely is a good word.
Yeah, and the serendipity involved in that. You could be working on a project that's suddenly incredibly dated because of political and social events
Yeah.
and trends. And similarly, in a really unexpected way, the concept that you're working on is just spot on relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And then, I've the final
Number
one,
10,
and these are
Mojo.
obviously slightly abstract. You could do 12, you could do 8. I did a course in pitching, and I don't think, and Mojo is about the moment, being in the room. I mean, you often nowadays the room is a room like this one, a Zoom room. But I know that there are a few times when, well, not to say myself, when one of us was just on fire. And that's a sort of thing of the moment. And it could be about the chemistry between you and the buyer. It could literally be about the mood you woke up in the morning. And if I was going to, because I know we're kind of over time, is just think about who you're with. If I was going to give you one piece of advice, have empathy. You think that the buyers have a really nice job and they're sitting on their backsides just waiting for a pitch, but they're also worried about losing their jobs and
Yep.
at the moment. So my view is make it the best hour of their day. If they're having a day and they're getting pitched all day, I've never been a buyer, but it's tiring because you're saying no most of the time and you're letting people down. And obviously you'd rather say yes, or at least I think you would. So make it the best hour of their day. And actually, we'll do another webinar on the pitch, on the actual being in the room thing, because a lot of people
That's a good
They're not
idea,
listening.
Roy.
They're not listening. So listen and have empathy.
Yeah, a wonderful colleague, Michael Hoff, always went into a pitch with a firm idea of what the buyer needed, not what he was selling the buyer. So he
Yeah.
starts with the buyer. Where's the gap in the buyer's pipeline of programming to meet, his or her needs? This is great. Roy, there's our 10 top kind of pitching tips. And I'm going to finish by just reminding our viewers that you're, in my experience, a very unusual creative producer in that you've also created very successful businesses, uh, particularly Jamie Oliver's Fresh One. You've developed a range of films and series programs from entertaining formats to really serious, curated, challenging, engaged films for the likes of HBO. You're a real benefit to the world of documentary business,
All
Roy.
right.
And you're
Uh,
also, let me finish. You're also offering your consulting services now in competition with Peter Hamilton and Dan Salerno, I might say. But we love to have you in our community, and we really hope that you are very successful with this new brand that you've launched.
well, thank you. That's way too kind. No, the only reason I was going to come in is that I think the reason why we do this is you're a hybrid in that you're a long-time business consultant, but you also love making films, and that's why
Thank
I'm
you.
pleased about your award. And I think we're true of both of us. We just want to stay engaged and enjoying this incredible business, and the fact that you are somebody who understands big corporations like Discovery and can make a film about a pangolin is also why I like talking to you. But guys, it's tough out there, but
Yep.
people want stories, and people want stories that they haven't seen before or heard before, audio or video. And have courage, because there's great stuff coming out. It's not easy, but it was never meant to be easy. And anything that we can help, me, Peter, Dan, we'd like to help you get your stuff on air.
Thank you very much, Roy. And how to reach Roy, your credentials are going to be posted in Documentary Business. Roy,
Great.
great to have you on board. And let's follow up with another webinar on what to do when you actually get in the meeting with the buyer. That's
Yeah.
our next step.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Roy.